One of the most difficult questions that a Christian, a Catholic, or somebody who believes in God might face is somebody that tells you they don't believe in God, and they ask you, why certain things happen to you, to them or you. And let me give you an example. I was friends with this girl, and I asked her one day, we were just friends. I said, do you want to go to eat Chinese food? And she was like, yeah, sure. So one of the last things she said was when we got off the phone was, I'm really not supposed to be eating this type of food. And I just assumed it was about fitness because she was very lean and she worked out. So I didn't really make too much of it. So we got to the restaurant, and you got to remember, this isn't a date. We're very comfortable talking with each other. It's not, some weird energy the first time you go out to dinner with somebody or you're dating somebody. So we're real comfortable with each other. And she's like, do you believe in God? And I was like, yeah, of course I do. And she's like, well, explain to me why. And I just said, well, look at the universe, look at a lion, how beautiful it is, or a leopard, look at the color of certain things, look at the ocean, look at the human body, especially like something like the eye, how many different parts of the eye have to work in order for you to see. I say we just take these things for granted. I said, I don't believe that two atoms just crashed into each other and they created all this. It's just super hard for me to believe. Then she brought up the animal aspect, like, oh, do you think we evolved from monkeys or apes? And I said, okay, well, even if that was true, who created that monkey or ape? Who created that life before we evolved into what we evolved into now? And she really didn't have a response, and she wasn't angry at me, and I wasn't mad at her by any stretch of the imagination for not believing in God. And she asked me, she's like, well, do you want to know why I don't believe in God? I was like, yeah, sure. And she's like, well, my mom and dad were married, they're still married, and my dad has a girlfriend on the side. And every single time that he would get paid, he would send all his money to the girlfriend, and her family would be starving for weeks and days at a time. And she's like, well, I used to pray all the time, and God never answered me. God never brought any food. God never made a miracle happen. And she's like, me and my brother, we would just be starving for days. And I was just like, what response as a Christian or a godly person or a Catholic are you supposed to have at that point? I'll pray for you. Like, this is what turns people away from God because they just told you their story and obviously they're hurting physically, emotionally, and a lot of people, so-called religious people, they'll just, they'll get out the Bible and just quote a scripture. And I think this is one of the worst things that you could do because you totally just, you know, basically you just say, what, I don't care about your pain whatsoever. I'm going to read you a scripture. I just believe that's not the way to go about it whatsoever. I think if you were totally honest and you were a person of God as you claim, you would just say, I can't answer that question. I don't have all the answers. I'm not God. I didn't create the universe. I'm sorry you suffered that type of pain, but I cannot answer that question. And then if you want to gradually say, obviously I'm going to pray for her or pray for that person. But at the moment when they're telling you that's the last thing that a person wants to hear. Tell that to a kid that was getting molested by his parents for, his or her first 15, 16 years of life. Do you think that they tell you, well, I was praying to God the whole time and it just continued to happen. You wonder why people get bitter. And then you wonder why people get bitter at Christians or the church or at God because of the way that so-called Christian people handle certain things like this. I think if you were going to be honest and genuine and really want that person to be like, maybe I should give God a try or give the Bible a try, maybe you should just be totally honest and say, hey, look, I really don't have the answers to that. I cannot answer that question. I wouldn't even attempt to answer that question because I don't know and I don't want to minimize your pain or hurt your feelings. I mean, that would be the correct response. So, I know it's a difficult situation when you're a Christian to answer certain things like that, but I think that's the best response. And getting back to the Chinese food issue, like when we went, remember what I said about, she's like, I'm really not supposed to be eating this food. Well, the food came, and I kid you not, she probably had 4 bites of the food, and she threw up everywhere on the floor, on the table, everywhere. And she was embarrassed, and we left, and she told me the only reason why I came here today is because you invited me, and I didn't want to, insult you. I said, I would never be insulted. She's like, but I didn't want to tell you because was hungry for so many days and that long that I could only eat certain things, and most of the time, those things that I eat, I have to cook. So she told me the one food that she was able to eat out was pizza, and everything else, if she didn't cook it, it would make her sick. And in that moment, God, He showed me like a crystal clear picture of when you're dealing with people who don't believe in God, and they tell you the reasons why, their pain, their suffering. I think the best answer is, the best response would be, if you really care about them and you really want them not to suffer and you really want the best for them, is just say, hey, look, I don't have all the answers and I'm sorry.